Well, recent progress for Andre Pallante came to a grinding halt on Wednesday night as the Cardinals were bludgeoned by the Washington Nationals at Busch. But hey, J.J. Wetherholt made his AAA debut, and he did so in style. We'll talk about it coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you, July 9th, 2025. Oh, boy. The starting pitching woes for the St. Louis Cardinals. Well, they're still here. Andre Pallante, not a great start from him on Wednesday night as the Cardinals fall to the Nationals 8-2. We will discuss his outing, which was not in keeping with his personal trends of late, because his last three starts were actually very good. Pallante came into Wednesday night having allowed just 2 earned runs over his previous 18 innings, which spanned 3 starts. So he had been pitching pretty well. He didn't pitch well on Wednesday night. And, you know, soft contact, hard contact, who gives a bleep, right? Either way, you had some of both that plagued Pallante. There was a lot of the hard stuff. And so it's the same old song and dance with a pitcher that has a pitch-to-contact nature. Sometimes the hard stuff is going to, as hard contact tends to do, go over the wall. Sometimes the soft stuff is going to fail to find you a glove. And that's going to result in 6 innings and 7 earned runs against Andre Pallante. Now, look, man, it's a thing we do with Pallante. It's a thing we do with Miles Mikolas as well, where it's the topic of conversation becomes the soft contact after the game. And I'm not saying this to beat Pallante down any more than the Nationals did already on the field. But I was reading, as I was getting started here tonight, the tweet from Jeff Jones, which featured a quote from Oliver Marmol. Quote, he's a high ball in play guy, and you're hoping it's at people. The hard contact wasn't, and some of the soft contact wasn't either. And you're going to have to live with those games. Like, that's not Ollie Marmol making an excuse. I don't know what Cardinals fans sometimes want to hear after a game like this, because I don't think anything good's going to come of whatever the manager or the player himself would say. Pallante, I was reading some of Jeff Jones' story. He's covering for John Denton this week for MLB.com. And Pallante said there were some things that he could have done to pitch a little bit better. Could have pitched a little bit better, I think, in terms of, like, smarter. Just some pregame routine and kind of knowing where I could have gotten some more miss. He got virtually no swing and miss in this game. Didn't really matter which pitch he was using. They hit him hard. So, like, whatever the comments are post-game, you're going to go, okay, I don't care. You gave up a touchdown. That's not good enough, and that's accurate. I think what's unfortunate when it comes to Pallante is he's the 3rd best pitcher in this rotation in terms of the production this year, when he would really profile a lot more suitably as like a number 4 or even a number 5 in a contending competitive rotation. But he's their 3rd guy. Fetty hasn't been good. Mikolas hasn't been good. And so it's almost like you have to expect more out of Pallante to cover for the shortcomings of the other guys. But that's not necessarily, like, those things don't all happen in a vacuum where you'd like to just be able to identify, all right, what's Andre Pallante doing? Okay. He's not performing like a number 3, and he's the 3rd best starter. Cardinals aren't really living up to your expectations. It's kind of hard to decide exactly how to feel about some of these. But with Pallante, because he is pitch to contact, you're going to have these. And that's what the quote from Ollie Marmol said. So a roundabout way for me to say, yeah, this is the way that it goes. And whatever might be said about it after the fact, I look at what Ollie said, and he identified exactly what happened. Hard contact wasn't at people. Some of the soft contact wasn't. You have to live with those games. You have to live with those games with guys that you're describing, though, a number 5 starter. And I like Andre Pallante and think he should be the Cardinals' number 5 starter next year. I am not advocating for him to be removed from the rotation because of one bad game. I think what he brings to the table has an element of consistency and a smidge of upside better than what you're going to find from Mikolas or Fetty at the respective points in their careers. So I'm all about Andre Pallante, but like the limitations when he just doesn't get a lot of swing and miss are that there are going to be games like this. And my goodness, the curveball that he threw to Nathaniel Lowe was bad. That was a hanging curveball that was still like at the top of the strike zone. Had to kind of tomahawk it out, line drive to right field. But that situation doesn't even come about in the first inning against Andre Pallante, if not for the fact that he walked the previous batter, Josh Bell. Had Bell in a 2-strike count, ends up losing him. Lowe makes him pay, and that's a 3-run first inning before the Cardinals even get to bat. And they end up scoring a run in the bottom of the first inning, too. So if you hadn't had things unfold the way that they do in the top of the first inning, that's maybe something representative of a lead for the Cardinals there. Now, of course, it was the only walk Palante would issue on the night, but it proved to be a damaging one because he should have been out of the inning if you find a way to stick it to Josh Bell, who's not having a great season. He's hitting .219. He's OPSing below 700. He scored a couple of runs and was 1 for 3 tonight, but I think that was a spot where maybe the whole game unfolds a little bit differently if the Cardinals don't face that early deficit. But, ultimately they only scored 2 runs. Your standouts offensively, Mason Wynn, 3 for 4. Lars Nootbaar, 2 for 4 with a run scored. Wilson Contreras scored the other Cardinal run in a 1 for 4 game. He was driven in by Alec Burleson, and that was the tail of the tape. 8-2 Nationals. Mackenzie Gore, another lefty, really good against the Cardinals. We'll continue to kind of talk about some of that. I do want to mention, though, before I get too deep, stick around. Down on the Farm will be very J.J. Wetherholt-centric, and it's going to be about half the episode tonight. We'll spend a few more minutes talking about this game, and then we'll get into the J.J. stuff. I'll target that for around 10 minutes into the podcast because there's not a lot else to say about this game tonight, and I know J.J. is something y'all would rather hear about anyway. And I'll get into some MLB draft stuff, I think, before Sunday. I'll pick one of these nights to have that be a big chunk of the podcast because it's an interesting philosophy of what the Cardinals might do with the number 5 overall pick. I had the post-game for STL Sports Central on Wednesday night with Chris Pelican, and we dove into that a little bit at the end of our 50-minute show. So if today's B-Schaeff Daily is not enough for you, Chris, I will say, does an excellent job. If you're not familiar with him, I always love it when Chris and I are on the post-game stuff for STL Sports Central because we just go and go and go. For 50 minutes, we talked a lot of hardcore baseball topics when it comes to the Cardinals. So check that out for STL Sports Central. But wrapping things up from Wednesday night's game, it really is a challenge to look at this Cardinals team and say, oh, they're a playoff contender, even though the standings would tell you that they are. As they are currently constructed, I will be honest, I don't see it. And look, before the season, I didn't see it, but I also thought the Cardinals would be better with a better core and foundation than most people expected. The win total, if you were going to go bet on it at a sports book somewhere, I looked it up because I was curious, like, what does the public expect here? 76.5 was that number. I still believe the Cardinals will exceed that number. And my preseason prediction was 83, 84 wins. I'm still kind of in that range, pending what we see during the month of July and the trade deadline. Because if the Cardinals are adding pieces at the deadline in a way that I don't really expect to see, because I just don't imagine they can give up prospects for short-term gains. Like a Harrison Bader has been thrown around as a name that right-handed hitting outfielder, has a good career numbers against left-handed starting pitching, which the Cardinals are obviously lacking right now, and their roster would make more sense if they had a guy like him, maybe even platooning with Victor Scott II. But you got to trade for that and give something up to get it, right? And so, and look, maybe there are ways to do that. People clamor and like the name Nathan Church, who is with the Memphis Redbirds, and he's got good numbers for them. But if the Cardinals don't see him as somebody that's part of their future, maybe he's somebody that can be attractive to another organization. Could it be like an Arozarena situation all over again? Absolutely. I think one big problem of the Mozeliak era that probably goes unnoticed, maybe it doesn't, maybe people notice it and agree with me on what I'm about to say. I think John Mozeliak does too much scoffing at the idea of a minor league player in his system that he or his staff doesn't believe has a big league future. Like, they overlook these guys as just, they're organizational fodder, they're AAA depth kind of guys. They couldn't be part of our team. I think that he's done that before, and I'm not going to cite a specific example, but I've gotten the vibes just being in different scrums where there's like reporters might be talking about a player, and you ask about that player, and the answer you get is kind of like, you're not sensing a lot of enthusiasm, right? Sometimes they may have been right. I will say as an example, like there have been times where when you would ask about, hey, you've got that Luken Baker in AAA really hitting a lot of home runs. It's kind of like you're underwhelmed by his response. I'm not saying he's talking shit about Luke and Baker. I'm just saying, like, you get the sense that maybe organizationally they didn't think Luke and Baker was going to amount to much. And guess what? Like, to this point, he hasn't. So if that's the way they actually felt, and I'm not just perceiving this, then maybe they were right. I know I said at 10 minutes I'd be talking Wetherholt, but I'm on a roll here. Give me a minute. I feel like that's, again, maybe I'm overthinking part of this. And like I said, in the case of if that is the way they felt about Luke and Baker, okay, like, what are you going to say? The guy has a 6-something OPS or whatever it is right now at the AAA level. Well, he's up to 700 OPS, but he's hitting 198. So, like, that's not, as much as, like, we wanted Luke and Baker to be a thing, it's not really looking like he's going to be a thing, at least not in this organization. So at times, like, their evaluation, maybe there's a reason they think that about certain players. But I feel like, it's just hard to shake the feeling that sometimes the organization, like, what do they actually think about Nathan Church? I don't know for sure. What do they actually think about Mike Antico? Because when I look at these guys and I look at their numbers in AAA, my thought is like, well, they feel very, not saying that I'll compare the styles of games, but on the organizational pecking order, they feel very Adolis Garcia-like, And look, Adolis Garcia was overlooked by everybody in baseball. It wasn't just the Cardinals that overlooked him, but he turned out to be a pretty good big leaguer, And how do they separate the Anticos from the Nathan Churches, from the Arozarenas, from the Adolis Garcias, from the Matt Koperniaks, who, like, Matt Koperniak was a guy that at one point in time we thought highly of, and he's hitting 209 and OPSing 580 in Memphis this year. He's not a dude, according to the production that he's delivering right now. So that's kind of where I look at this and say, man, I'm not saying their job is easy, but if they've got these certain guys anyway that are in AAA that they don't really think long-term about, trade those guys before they flame out eventually, like it seems Luke and Baker is fixing to do probably at the end of this year within this organization. Trade him. If Nathan Church has 1,000 OPS in AAA, call him up or trade him. There's no reason right now for a Cardinal offense that has been as inconsistent as this one to not be trying some things. So he hits left-handed. I do not care. At this point, it's this notion that, like, the Cardinals cling to the status quo. We can't give Nathan Church a little bit of run because, well, what's that going to do to Lars Nootbaar? What's that going to do to Burleson? What's that going to do to, I don't know. What are those guys getting you right now with the run that they're getting? I'm not saying to, like, take away the runway from Nootbaar, Burleson, Gorman, and everybody, but I'm just using that as an example of, like, don't have a hesitancy to make a move if a bold move is sometimes the one the organization needs. Nathan Church, call him up and play him every day for a week. I don't know. Just see what happens. It seems like the Cardinals are not really ever the organization to do that with these types of guys unless it's somebody that you almost know isn't going to pan out, like Ryan Vilade. They did it with him, and maybe it's just easier to say that it wasn't ever going to work out. We should have known because I have the benefit of hindsight. I watched it not work out. But Vilade is not, like, super old to where, age is definitely something you look at, but he's 26. So, like, maybe they thought Vilade was that guy, but, like, he wasn't, and, they got rid of him. Do they call up Nathan Church and the same things happen? Maybe. But could they get somebody to bite on Nathan Church for Harrison Bader? Well, if they don't think Church is going to pan out, offer it up, man, because he's not part of your future anyway, so you're not really sacrificing anything, right? Like, decide what you think of these guys, and if you're scoffing at them internally, which I'm not saying John Mozeliak or the Cardinals are doing about Nathan Church, but he's the guy that is ripping the cover off the ball at AAA. That seems like an extraneous piece right now. Those are the ways that maybe you can improve your big league roster without giving up quote-unquote prospects that people feel like, you've sacrificed from your future if you do it that way. This was not necessarily the route I thought I would be taking with the podcast tonight, but I hope I at least articulated what I was trying to say there. And maybe this is a topic we can dive into a little bit deeper down the road. But I feel like they're going to kind of stand pat. And what I think they need is 3 different trades, like a bold deadline. But I've been doing this B-Schaeff Daily podcast since 2020. I've been doing this show for now 6 different baseball seasons. I've been doing this show more and more each year. Hopefully 2025 will be the most episodes ever. I think we crossed a couple hundred episodes in 2024, trying to do it consistently. But every year it feels like I say bold deadline, and then it kind of is a predictable deadline, or when they make the move they make, you're like, oh, that's kind of a very Cardinals-y trade deadline move. Do something bold. I don't know. Maybe it's harder than I give it credit for, and if that's the case, I apologize to Mo. But I do see other teams doing it, so I feel like there is a realm in which something like that could happen. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Could you buy while you sell? Could you buy a piece that's not a rental by trading away a prospect, and that's going to hurt people's feelings? But also, what do those prospects always turn into? I shouldn't say always, but often. Prospects sometimes, they have to live up to the hype or they don't. And sometimes it takes prospects to make deals if you feel like there's an attainable piece out there. I'll give an example. I don't know if this guy's the answer, but and I don't know if he would be available to the Cardinals because he's in the division. But Bryan Reynolds is having a mediocre season for the Pirates, and he's got I'm not going to say a big contract, but he's got a contract, a long one, where he's paid like $15 million a year for the next 4 to 5 years. Bryan Reynolds, I think, is a really good player, but he's 30, and is he falling off the cliff? I don't know. There's risk associated. Go get a Bryan Reynolds. Okay, but is he better than Burleson? Is he better than Walker? Is he better than, I don't know, but that's why they're paid to find that out, and I'm paid to talk about whether or not they accomplished it. I'm just giving examples. Talking off the cuff. Let me know if I'm crazy. Let me know if I have no clue. I probably don't, but sometimes I feel like shows like this are what we need after an 8-2 loss to the Nationals. So that's what I've got on that front. I don't really want to say anything else about the current Cardinal team. I want to talk about J.J. Wetherholt in the minor leagues. So let's get into his debut as we go down on the farm.
It's time to go down on the farm. Brought to you by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs.
You'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle.
Huh?
Okay, so we start with the Memphis Redbirds tonight because J.J. Wetherholt did too. Hey, see what I did there? Wetherholt called up to Memphis over the weekend, I want to say, that was announced. And we didn't get a chance to see him until today because they don't play in the minor leagues on on Mondays. They don't play in the minor leagues. And they were rained out on Tuesday in Memphis, taking on the Charlotte Knights. So it was a doubleheader today, the first game of which J.J. Wetherholt started at shortstop for the Memphis Redbirds. And in that start, he went 2 for 4 with a triple and a home run in his debut at the AAA Memphis level. The triple was kind of a line drive in a sun field that the fielder probably could have caught but didn't even get a leather piece on it. And so instead of calling it an error, you got to call it a triple. Not really kind of a triple, but it technically is a triple, so we'll call it a triple. The home run you can't take away from him. Dead center field, over 400 feet, right down to whatever the version of the Freeze's Lawn is there at AutoZone Park, I believe is the name of the Memphis Redbirds Stadium. And so J.J. Wetherholt doing his J.J. Wetherholt stuff and bringing it to the next level. What everybody is going to want to know is, when is J.J. Wetherholt coming to St. Louis? Well, instead of answering that question, I'm going to take a moment here and tell you about whatever else happened in that game one. 7-inning doubleheader, 10-4. Memphis lost the first game. So hold that thought for a second. I just want to clear up if there's anything else to get to. Nathan Church, we've talked about him. He was 1 for 3. Lucan Baker was also 1 for 3. Jimmy Crooks was 1 for 2. Curtis Taylor was the starter. There had been some thought of, hey, is this somebody the Cardinals might call upon to start some games for them? Because he's got an ERA about 3 in AAA. He's 29 years old, not really a prospect, not really a strikeout guy. Well, he got hit around in this one on Wednesday. 5 innings, 8 runs, 7 earned, 11 hits. A couple of home runs. Taylor still has a 3.63 ERA in AAA. But that, not a great showing from him. And then I will go ahead and tell you, game 2, the Redbirds also lost with Zach Plesac on the mound. 9-4 loss in that one. He gave up a touchdown, 7 runs and 2 1/3. He, I don't know. You might as well keep him around down there if you don't have a lot of depth, but he is probably not going to ever be a big league answer. Don't have any problem with the Cardinals signing him, but his ERA is 11.9 in AAA. So I do not believe he is ripe for a big league opportunity. They just don't have the depth, gang. I mean, they really don't. It's on the way. We like the Springfield rotation. We like what, is coming of the Memphis rotation with guys like McGreevy, Quinn Matthews, Takoa Roby. You got to get Tink Hentz there eventually as well, but they just don't have the depth right now. So, yeah, keep throwing out Zach Plesac. Could be worse. Springfield Cardinals actually did play yesterday, but were not able to play today due to rain. So that's kind of an interesting quirk. So maybe I'll check out. Springfield was 7-1. I think we talked about that on last night's show anyway, briefly at the end. So nothing new there from Springfield. Jordan Walker was 0 for 3 with a couple of walks and scored 2 runs in the game on Tuesday. But that absolutely sucks, I guess, that they're keeping him in the minors right now, trying to get him some at-bats, and then they got rained out today. So we'll see if Walker plays in a doubleheader later this week. We'll also see where does Ivan Herrera end up going. He told Jeff Jones and other reporters at Busch this week that he was expecting to go out on a rehab stint beginning Thursday or Friday. So we'll see if that becomes Thursday. Maybe it'll be happening tomorrow for Ivan Herrera, and where they might send him could depend on the weather, could depend on other factors. But that's all going on. Let's get back into the JJ stuff. And by the way, did strike out a couple of times in game 2 of that doubleheader, but he did also get a base hit and score a run, had a double. So he's 1 hit away from the AAA cycle in 2 games today. Didn't have a single, but he doubled, he tripled, and he homered. Wetherholt with a 1,500 OPS after 2 games at the AAA level, hitting .375. So great stuff. When do we expect to see him with the Cardinals? I've talked about this a little bit. I will repeat my thoughts on this now. Let's say he goes on a Jack Caglione-like tear. And if you're not familiar with Jack Caglione, he was the player picked 1 pick ahead of Wetherholt by the Royals in last summer's draft and was kind of being brought along slowly by the Royals this year. Started in AA, was raking. They called him up to AAA. He played 12 games there, and he hit 6 home runs in those 12 games, was OPSing 1,094, hitting .319, slugging .720. And so after those 12 games, they called him up to the big leagues. Since then, Caglione has 123 plate appearances in the bigs. He's hitting .148 with a .464 OPS. Now, he did hit a home run on Tuesday night, but it has been really, really slow for him. And so a guy with that prospect pedigree could not be looking better in the minors, gets called up and immediately gets it shoved in his face. He's batting .148 over a 31-game sample size for Kansas City. This is not to say that Wetherholt's going to mirror Caglione. Caglione's a bigger power hitter. I think Wetherholt will ultimately be a better all-around hitter. You can expect hopefully a higher average, more on base, those things from JJ. Whereas long-term, you would expect more homers, I would think, from Caglione. All this to say, if he goes on a Jack Caglione-like run and the OPS is 1,100 for the next month, and I say the next month, it'll really be more like the next 5 or 6 weeks, because there's going to be a date where it becomes a possibility for the Cardinals to call up Wetherholt. This year, I'm talking. I don't know that date off the top of my head, but I can tell you it's going to be a date at which they know he will have fewer than 45 days on the active roster for the season and will have fewer than 130 at-bats before the end of the season. Because in doing it that way, the Cardinals will maintain Wetherholt's rookie eligibility for 2026, which means Rookie of the Year eligibility, which means it's exactly what they did with Mason Wynn at the end of 2023. He came up for that cup of coffee in mid-August, and they made sure to keep him under those thresholds. Wynn was up with the Cardinals to begin 2024. He did not win Rookie of the Year, but if he had done so, the Cardinals would have got that compensatory draft pick, I believe, between rounds 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken. So it is kind of a big deal. It's a very notable carrot that they dangle in front of teams to try to not have teams game service time rather than wait till April 23rd or whatever it is to call a guy up. They're basically saying, call him up at the beginning of the season, make sure he gets the full year of service time. And if you do it that way and he wins Rookie of the Year, you get a draft pick. What that creates is a little bit of intrigue at the end of the previous season where a team, it's not about really service time so much as rookie eligibility. A team will wait to make sure that a player will at least have that rookie eligibility for the following season. So even if he's OPSing 1,100 in Memphis, you will not see him before 45 days prior to the end of the regular season. That's fact number 1. Number 2, even if he's performing that way, as we've seen with Caglione, that cannot just in and of itself guarantee that he's ready to be a big league hitter. He very well may be. I think if you called up Wetherholt today, he'd probably hold his own. But you have to see it first, in my opinion, at AAA over a prolonged, at least 6-week stretch, which kind of coincides with, kind of makes sense, right? With when the Cardinals called him up, because now if you see a good sample from him, you do have that opportunity. If the roster makes sense, if the production makes sense, if you have a spot to put him, you could do the Mason Wynn 2023 thing with Wetherholt this August. You could do that. Will they do it? I don't think so, but I'm not going to rule out the possibility. It's up to him to be able to put up the numbers that are just so eye-popping, and not just the numbers, but the way he carries himself, the way he approaches at bats, the way he strikes out, the way he, all of it, I think would matter in the Cardinals making those decisions. But if you're wondering, will they consider doing something like that? See how many games they play him at positions besides shortstop. Not saying they couldn't call him up if he was pretty much exclusively an infielder and then throw him into the outfield. I guess stranger things have happened, but I wouldn't expect it. If they start giving him outfield reps, which I think they should do, again, to this point, I've said it doesn't really matter. When he gets to the big leagues, he can play anywhere. He's a good athlete. Keep him at shortstop as long as he can hack it, because that's the best athlete on the field. Toughest position to play. So the longer he sticks there, the more of an athlete I believe that he is. I would now start, though, with him being at the AAA level, throwing him into the corner outfield. Hell, throw him into center field. Just see what it looks like. Get him some reps. If they do that, and if they do it sooner than later, it tells me they may consider an avenue where something opens up and they could bring him up later on in the season. But it would have to be a combination of great production, carrying himself the right way, looking the part probably defensively at wherever they would plan to install him in the St. Louis lineup. Probably some injuries or some trades that we don't necessarily anticipate would have to happen away from the big league roster to facilitate that. Like, people would say, hey, don't be trading Nathan Church to make a move. Trade Lars Nootbaar at the deadline, call Nathan Church up and start him. And let's say they do something crazy like that. They trade Nootbaar for a pitcher so that Michaelis can leave the rotation. McGreevy and this new guy come in, a team that has a surplus of pitching, but they need an outfield bat. They like Nootbaar. He's controllable. Nobody imagines the Cardinals are going to trade Nootbaar, but let's say that happens. And then Nathan Church is playing suddenly, but it's just not going well. And the Cardinals also have an injury to Burleson, or Walker is still, scuffling. And so there is a corner outfield spot available, and they say, screw it, call up Wetherholt on the 23rd of August, and they just do it. Like, I'm not going to put a percentage on that even. It's non-zero, but all of the above would have to go right, and it's a bunch of stuff that I don't expect to happen, other than, I'm not going to say I don't expect him to have 1,000 OPS in AAA, because he very well might do that over the next month, because I think he's a really, really freaking good player. But that's sort of where I stand on Wetherholt. If you want to know what's going to happen, you will not see him called up to St. Louis. Don't ask before mid-August when that 45-day threshold has been crossed. And don't blame the Cardinals for this either. They would be stupid not to hold him. He could homer every at-bat for the rest of the month. They would be stupid not to hold him back until mid-August, whenever that date is crossed, and then you can at least keep him under 130 ABs down the stretch to keep him as a rookie for next year. Because if he's homering in every at-bat in Memphis, he might be a Rookie of the Year candidate next year at the end of it all, and that is a draft pick. That is a full player that you can get for massaging his debut in such a way. So I don't want to hear that, oh, the Cardinals are just cheap. No. Strategically, it is set up in such a way that you have to do it that way. I mean, you'd be stupid not to. So, look, they drafted this kid a year ago, basically 12 months ago, and we're talking about a debut. So they picked the right kid. They're going to have an opportunity to see him grow and see him soon. He'll be on the team 2026. He'll come into spring with every opportunity to win a job. And if he doesn't win the job, he'll be up at some point in 2026, barring injury. I would be shocked if he's not making a debut next season at some point. So he is coming. Your patience is valuable. It will be rewarded. But that's how I see it. They're going to Mason win it at the earliest, like they did with him in 2023, if everything breaks right. But that's a lot to be excited about because, man, this offseason is going to be so cool. I know that Cardinals fans are like so over what's going on right now. There's still 5 games above 500, I would submit to you. But I would also say Chaim Bloom's going to take over, and we're not going to know what the hell's going on. I'm not saying he's going to be super bold right out of the gates. I kind of hope he is because the roster demands it. But I could list you 8 guys from the big league roster, and I can't guarantee that any one of them are here next year. 6 of the 8 probably will be. But the 2 that aren't, we may not see coming which the 2 are going to be, right? It's going to depend on which 2 actually have trade value, which 2 do the Cardinals have the willingness to trade, and then executing that move. It might not be the 7th and 8th best of the group of 8. It might be the 3rd best and the 5th best because those are the guys that other teams covet, and the Cardinals can get deals done with those players. It might be that, Lars Nootbaar is one of the guys dealt because they realize they can't sign him. What if Brendan Donovan is one of the guys dealt? That shouldn't be. Got to extend that guy. But, it's going to be so compelling. And then Wetherholt is going to fit into all of this in the offseason. So if you're not subscribed to my channel now, you might as well just do it, if not for what's going to come the rest of the season, but for every offseason podcast we're going to get to do. Because honestly, I enjoy those podcasts more than the season ones. Nobody wants to talk about losing to the Nationals 8-2. Do I want to talk big picture, speculating in an informed way about what could happen down the pipe? You bet. So hit that subscribe button, follow b-schaeff Daily on Spotify. That, though, is going to do it for this edition of the show. We got over 30 minutes out of a game that the Cardinals lost 8-2, so you feel good about that. Let me know your Wetherholt thoughts. Let me know your starting rotation thoughts. No official starter yet listed for Saturday. It could be McGreevy. It could be Fetty. It could be a combo of the 2 in some form. We will see. The Cardinals are certainly dragging their feet on a decision being made publicly, which kind of makes sense. If it had rained out on Tuesday, you would be talking about a completely different set of circumstances. And so announcing it earlier than they need to, probably there's no upside to that. But it could get interesting over the next couple of days in whether or not we hear about what their plans are going to be. So stay tuned. I'll be podcasting every day this week, and I will be in Atlanta. I don't know if I've shared that on this channel yet, but I plan to be in Atlanta for the All-Star game, the Derby on Monday. I won't be there for the draft. I got to drive there Monday morning. All-Star game Tuesday, and then I'll be covering some SEC Media Days stuff as well while I am down there. Mizzou coach Eli Drinkwitz talking at Media Days in Atlanta on Thursday. So a lot of good stuff there if you're a college football fan like me. So that's what's coming up. Appreciate you guys for supporting my channel. Hit the video description up if you'd like to join the membership for the B-Schaeff Daily membership, which includes a Discord component if you are on the second tier of the YouTube membership for a private group chat on Discord. If you want the link to the Discord as well, say that in the comments. I'll send it to you. A lot of good stuff with Cardinals fans talking things over in the Discord, which is free to join. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the show. Thank you guys so much for the support, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.